Hello guys, welcome to another relaxing video, and this one we're not gonna learn anything but some comments on this new version of Blender. So since it has been released for actually quite some time now, and I'm always curious on how it's gonna feel like with the new UI and the improvement. Blender is not really used in like huge studio production before, but I'm seeing the trend of people trying to use it in all sorts of places. And also in recent days, when we started this new semester, Maya is really chunky. This new version, Maya 2019, is by far one of the worst release I have ever seen. It has a lot of issues with when you're animating. If you're moving a lot of keys, it's gonna freeze. When you're rigging, you cannot pen skin weighting with complicated joint structures and also smooth preview. And for characters, XGen just its editor is just broken all the time. You don't really see the UI in the utilities, so it's problematic. Okay, so I think if Maya or Autodesk keeps doing it, it's gonna lose position, especially for like indie or smaller studios. It's just not worth it anymore. I mean, like since new softwares like Blender, I mean not new software, they're actually pretty close when it comes to age. But it's just with this new version of Blender, I just feels like it is in some people's consideration already. Okay. So I'm not really trying to do a whole lot with it, but I just went through this video from Flip Normals about sculpting in Blender. I think that's a good entry point for me to just have some taste of Blender, and this is actually the video after I finished that introduction to Blender sculpting from Flip Normals. Then this is actually the first try from a ZBrush artist's point of view how Blender sculpting feels like. Anyway, let's give it a go. Okay. I think you can sculpt from a traditional like modeling software. It's kind of like really cool, and you can just create some primitives and just start sculpting. One thing I'm missing from the very beginning is the ability to do data mesh. Maybe I don't know where it is, but I only know there is this data topo thing. So I have to use the simple brush to just kind of like go through the model to data mesh it. And then I just started to use moves to just drag things around. I realized the smooth is not that strong, so I have to lower down the level, subdivision level or density of the mesh by doing data topo again. And then just a lot of dragging around. Okay, and it just doesn't feel really comfortable to start with, just because of the habit I have with ZBrush. A lot of things are different, like shortcuts especially. Even navigation is kind of like something I have to get used to. So, and I use mostly the move brush because that's the one that just feels the same. Other than that, it's just all alien to me. Okay, just really carefully just go through the process of dragging out the shape of the head and use masking, and just use the grab brush to just get the neck out. And then I need to data mesh, so I have to go use the simple brush to just data topo it, I guess. Maybe there's a way, I just don't know. Anyway, so now just a lot of dragging also in the front of the face just to get the basic shape. And here everything feels actually pretty smooth, just to get the basic layout ready. Okay, and then again, I really wish there is kind of like some data mesh feature right away somewhere. But again, maybe I just don't know. I was trying that symmetry thing, see if it does something, but it just symmetry, just do the symmetry basically. So I have to go use the simple brush again just to data mesh it myself by just going through the entire surface of the model. Just some typical techniques to get the ears masked and dragged out, and then the data topo really becomes really helpful here. I can really just data mesh that area really quickly, and then just some dragging to find out a proper location for the ear. Right, some more dragging to the shape. Right, and then some other dragging and smoothing. Okay, I'm just really not feeling I'm able to advance just because of the brushes that I just don't really, familiar with. And then I started to try to use the other brushes like the clay brush. It should be the equivalent of the clay build-up in ZBrush. And it works okay. In the beginning, it feels like the intensity is actually really strong, so I have to lower it down quite a bit to make it work. And again, I fall back to just use move and stay here for some time, just to move things around to and try to make the shape look better. Okay, some smoothing and and a little bit of the sculpting, and it becomes really weak when I make the brush really small, so it just doesn't feel as fluid as ZBrush to start with. But maybe that's just because I'm not familiar with how to control the intensity. But then I just go again, fall back to move and just drag things around, and then use the shortcuts to go to the different brushes. Okay, dragging the area around the eye socket and the zygmatic bone, and the eyebrow, things like that. Okay. All right. So overall, I think it is definitely usable. I mean, it should be usable, right? But it's just compared to ZBrush, I think some of the things like shortcuts and places is a bit different, so you have to spend some time to get used to. Yeah, and I start to use the clay build-up to start sculpting. The Dana Topo is actually pretty cool when you're working with smaller shapes, kind of like ZBrush's Sculptures Pro. But as people have been talking about before, it does have performance issues. The Dana Topo was in Blender for a long time, and it never went to ZBrush for the reason of performance. And it does have performance issue when I'm trying to use it when you're reaching to smaller resolution. Okay, so I guess that's why ZBrush just doesn't have it for the longest time. So I need the eyeballs. Just go ahead and go back to object mode and just use the basic primitives. It takes me a while to figure out how to scale things actually. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know how it's like kind of like tweak mode in Maya when you have some points you can just click and drag right away, and then I just duplicate it and then just change the X to negative value to flip it. And then I was trying to find out how to smooth it, and I figured out that there is a modifier you can just add some different levels. So that's what I did over there to get the eyeballs smoothed out, and just some more dragging to refine the eyelid. Okay, now I fall back to moving again. It's because this is the only brush that feels really close. One thing I'm really missing here from compared to ZBrush is the damp standard brush. I was thinking that Chris brush is the equivalent of damp standard, but it's kind of like doing a little bit of pinching. So I was like confused a little bit. It doesn't feel exactly like damp standard. So I was like using it and then feeling like it's just not quite close, but it's useful. It's usable for sure. And then some more sculpting around the eyelid to refine the shape, and then going down to the nose. And again, I need Dynamesh, so I need to go to Dana Topo again just to go through the surface to give it more subdivision level, doing the nostrils kind of thing. And then again, one of the things that you will feel really different if you're a ZBrush artist is that the size control of the brush is like holding down F and then start dragging right away. It's very different from other programs like Substance, ZBrush, Maya. It's like it's already on, you don't have to drag it, and you just move your cursor to change it. It's kind of feels like not as convenient, but maybe that's just personal preference again, but it's just very controversial to others. And then I realized that there is actually a sculpting module, so I actually have to switch to that and then change the material, because that one doesn't. I hate that matte cap thing that's in ZBrush also, because it kind of like fakes the shape, adding a lot of cavities and stuff. You can see here I'm just using the simple brush to re-topologize that area for the mouse before I start to create the basic shapes. Some dragging to have the volume there first, and then the crease brush again, right, just to dig in, right, like that, and then just dragging the contour to, you know, refine the shape of the mouse, some smoothing, and then moving around. And I just go ahead and use, I was trying to do the node on the corner of the mouse, but it's just hard to control the intensity. It's like either too strong or too weak, right? It just doesn't feel like, you know, something I get used to with ZBrush. So I guess the intensity thing is actually quite different somehow. You have to get used to like how strong the brush is. And then just more tweaking around the structures of the lip, and then just enhance the edge of the lip. Some more dragging on the cheekbone. Yeah, right. So one thing that really bothers me is the, you know, the Dynamesh thing. So if there's a Dynamesh, I really like to know where it is. Otherwise, the Dynatopo feels like it's not as fast as Dynamesh in this case, because you can always Dynamesh real quick. And overall, it's just making the topology like all different from our different areas. That kind of like feels not quite easy to manage. Anyway, maybe again, I think that's personal preference. It should take me longer to get used to, and once I get used to, maybe I'll have a different workflow to sculpt. Okay. The flattened brush is actually really close to edge polish, so that's good. I really enjoyed using that brush for a little bit. And yeah, and again, when you're zooming away or making the brush too big or too small, the Dynatopo really changes how things looks like. But I believe there is a setting to, you know, tell it to either respect the size of the brush or not. I just don't bother to change it in there. But now it's the time for refining the ear. You just start to, you know, do the internal structures. And again, I need to use the Dynatopo to have more resolution, some sculpting to dig in. And then I realized that you can actually drag it to make it bigger, so you can see the UI, the name of the brush on the UI, and then you can, yeah, you can see which one you're using. I'm wondering if there's a way to assign shortcut. I believe there is. They do have some shortcut already, but I think, you know, I just like to be able to assign shortcut myself really quickly to make things easier for me. Yeah, just, you know, blocking the structures of the ear using Move to and crease to refine bigger and smaller shapes. And then I realized that the draw brush with a different fall off actually feels more like damp standard. So I started to use that as damp standard instead. And it works pretty well, but the thing is I have to always go to that fall off to toggle between the standard brush, or the draw brush in this case, and damp standard. Okay, anyway, not feeling that convenience, but anyway, maybe that's just you know, ZBrush kind of like workflow is affecting me, and maybe there's better ways to do this in Blender's sculpting. Brush wise, of course, Blender doesn't have all the brushes ZBrush have. ZBrush is, you know, have far more brushes than Blender, and you can create all sorts of interesting custom brushes, and there are a lot of brushes already built by, you know, other artists. Yeah, I'm just constantly tweaking the contour, sorry, the fall off graph, just to get different tip shapes, I guess, to get the things I want, especially for the winkles here. I really want to use damp standard kind of thing over here, so I'm tweaking it all the time earlier, and then moving on down to some more refining on the structures around the eyelid. Okay, you can see now I'm still using draw brush, right, just to change the profile all the time. Doing some, you know, refinement to the up and downs around the corners, and then the fold above the eyelid. Okay, and then of course the draw brush to just quickly add some ridge on the edge of the eyelid. Okay, and realize maybe that's too strong, so I'm trying to smooth it out. Oh yeah, I'm trying to do the eye corner, right? The the tier something. So you just yeah, it's not that hard, just sculpt it out and then smooth out what's happening there. Okay. Yeah. So overall, I think it's definitely have great potential to be able to sculpt. If there is a way to retopologize really nicely in Blender, like Quadro 2, I think this is a viable option to do a whole lot of sculpting already. Still, compared to ZBrush, I think it's not that flexible in many things, because ZBrush is dedicated for sculpting, and they have so many new features coming out every year, like things like the measure and things like that, and using subdivision level kind of thing, do the UV real quick, and even plugins like ZWrap. It's gonna really help a lot. But I'm excited to to see like there's another program that can sculpt pretty well, and I hope that in the future that they can keep enhancing it. Maybe at some point they will be competitive enough compared to ZBrush. In my opinion, it's still gonna be something not as good as ZBrush when it comes to sculpting, because ZBrush's workflow is just so like through the years it just has been built up really quickly, and it has really sophisticated workflows. But this is not bad. You can just go sculpt, and you can go to really detailed part like the wrinkles I'm doing here now with the lips. Yeah, it's definitely capable of doing like a lot of sculpting. But I just think that if they could add things like maybe there is, I just don't know, like Dynamesh, zero measure kind of thing, which I really use a lot. That would be nice. And if there is a really cool, like convenient retopologizing process, that would be perfect. I mean, I would totally switch to Blender if some of the features that that's really common in ZBrush can be created here. Yeah. And I have also heard that this is also like open source. If you know how to program, you should be able to program the features you want yourself. But that could be really difficult though for one person. Yeah, just trying to help with the node area a little bit more. You can see I'm switching back to simplify brush just to be able to retopologize that area. And then use clay brush. Clay brush, the only difference that I feel like clay brush is from ZBrush is clay build up is that the intensity is a bit harder to control. I'm not sure why. It just feels really strong and have to weak it down a lot. Some more moving on the skull, trying to realize where the protuberance on the back of there. Anyway, so that's the process. Takes me an hour to go from the beginning to the very end. I have to say I struggled a lot, and this is 4 times of the speed, of course. And I think the thing that stops me from advancing quickly compared to ZBrush is the lack of data mesh. And other than that, it's just some little details that are different, and I don't have shortcuts. But overall, the feeling of the sculpting is similar. So I think it is definitely worth investing, especially for beginners that you cannot really pay for ZBrush because it's kind of like expensive. Learning sculpting is gonna be equally, sculpting skill-wise is going to be equally valuable here, and ZBrush, I think all the core concepts of sculpting is going to be exactly the same between ZBrush and Blender or any other software, basically, right? Yeah, so if you want to ask me, can I start learning character modeling and sculpting with Blender, I would definitely say yes, you can use it now. I think it's a nice tool to use. But compared to ZBrush, though, I think it still have some disadvantages, and I think it has some advantages also. Like the Dynatopo thing is kind of like pretty cool to use, the simple brush is nice. Simplified brush is also nice. It's just basically do that topo without having to do anything else, uh, without changing the shape, basically. UI wise, I think it has the potential to be better than ZBrush. I mean, ZBrush has the worst UI, the worst UI in the universe. It's just like the outliner here, or whatever that is. You know, in ZBrush you just have to drag a whole lot to go to different places. But you can see here, you can dock a lot of UIs here. You can make them disappear, and you know, all those drop downs and stuff. This is just, you know, really clean with this new UI. And ZBrush is having a lot of weird stuff that you know, a lot of weird stuff happening with it. You know, not necessarily bad, but just weird. And ZBrush is also one of the softwares refuses to agree with other conventions. That's typical, and that makes ZBrush really hard to work with when you wanted to incorporate it with other workflows. The UV is flipped in ZBrush. I mean, what's the point to keep it like that? I mean, I don't know how hard it is just to change the program to make the UV not flip, but they just refuse to do that. And the UI starts with A instead of file. I mean, I don't know why they have to invent the whale like that. Anyway, so with that being said, I think overall it's painful in the beginning. I can see myself getting used to it if I keep using it for you know, more practices. But yeah, I think that's it for this video. Some more like a commentary about this new Blender UI and new Blender version. And I hope that the information can be helpful, or if you have any comments on like how this some of my understanding maybe is wrong about Blender. I mean, this is totally new to me. this is like the first time I'm trying to use Blender to sculpt something out from the beginning to the end. The tutorial from Flip Normals really helps, of course. Alright, hope in the future I can maybe post more Blender stuff, but I think until next time, thanks for watching.